And I also want to get into the idea of right-wing violence and the effect that these political opinion shows have on people who are deranged, or what I mean, that go out and do terrible things. According to the National Consortium for the Study of Terrorism and Responses to Terrorism, right-wing terrorists perpetrated 145 ideologically motivated homicide incidents. Isn't that not scary? More than half of the victims were targeted because they were racial and ethnic minorities. Oh, those African American, those black people, they're lazy. Oh,
Well,
those people coming over the border with drugs, with their cantaloupe calves, they're here to take your jobs. They're here to take your jobs and destroy your family.
well, the shooter in Newtown, he got his weapon to shoot up this fool from his mother, who was a super
Right-wing
pro-gun,
extremists.
right-wing, Fox-watching extremist. Yeah.
You got to remember the Sikh temple shooting.
Yep.
The guy thought that the Sikhs were Muslim, and so he shot up the temple. And here's the best example. Remember, abortion doctor George Tiller. He was murdered years ago. And I remember seeing a segment, I should say not just a segment, but over and over again, Bill O'Reilly calling him Dr. Tiller the baby killer, over and over and over again. Now, do you
Probing
think?
people. Yeah.
And so, is it any surprise that when you hear this kind of vitriolic rhetoric every day on not just TV but hate radio, Rush Limbaugh, Sean Hannity, and also their respective TV shows, is it really a surprise when some of the listeners decide to get violent? 37% of these homicide incidents were perpetrated by a lone individual, the supposed lone wolf. That, they say, oh, well, he wasn't affiliated with us. That's not our fault. We're going to continue to spew this hatred, but if you go out and do something based on what we're telling you, no, we can't do that. Now, do you know only one person at DHS investigates right-wing extremism? One person. They have more people. They have more people investigating Muslims than they do right-wing extremists. Surprise, surprise.
Of course.
Of course, what do you expect when day in and day out you hear that Obama and the Democrats are evil? They're Muslim, Kenyan, socialist, communist, Nazis, which makes no sense. Now, a good example of some of the violent rhetoric that you hear is from Angela Tantaros, and she said on her radio show, quote, Fox said we're targets. Clearly Media Matters and others have put us on a target list. And they said, oh, Fox is just crazy. They're just paranoid. Really? Are we? This is what is happening to our press. This is Obama's America. It's like the Soviet Union. He said he would change the country. He said it. And a lot of people voted for him. And if you see any of those people today, do me a favor. Punch them in the face.
You know what's ironic is that if it were really like Soviet Russia, she wouldn't be allowed to say that.
Yeah, we have this whole freedom of the press and everything, and she's got a right to say that, I guess, but I think it's more akin to violent and trying to incite violence. But what do I know? And then, of course, she comes back later and says, to be clear, I didn't say punch Obama in the face. You're going to get me arrested with this type of government. If someone voted for him, if anyone that you know who voted for President Obama, smack him down.
So yeah, don't punch Obama in the face. Punch whoever voted.
Yeah, punch people who voted for you. That elderly person that voted for
not
Obama,
inciting.
punch her out of her wheelchair.
Yeah, that's not inciting violence or anything. The type of people who listen to that show aren't going to take it literally and actually go out.
Well, we hope that they don't.
Right.
We hope that they don't.
But they will.
But not all of them. I think any sane person goes, hey, that's a little too far. Like, somebody had called up Angela Tantaros on her show after she had said the first statement and said, hey, that's not the direction you want to go. So
right,
there are sane people.
They do it on purpose, though. They do it like kicking logs into a fire. They want to get people riled up, and I think a lot of them hope that one or two of them will actually take them seriously and go out and do something and cause, a huge catastrophe. And of course, when it happens, you never hear them. Never hear the right-wing pundits call these people terrorists because
They're always the
they're
lone wolf.
yeah, they're right-wing white people. They can't be terrorists.
No, it's all that left-wing terrorism, which you never hear anything about. Because left-wing terrorism is maybe smashing the windows of a lab to free animals,
Yeah,
essentially.
that's about as far as they go.
Right. And I want to get into another example of the right-wing vitriol. You remember Mr. Mark Kessler, right? One of the dumbest people in America. He said, quote, "Democrats are the most vile creatures in this country. They are vile. They're evil. Evil, un-American. I don't even want to call them people because that's being too kind. They're scum. You go against your country. They hate their country." And you wonder why some people get violent. And you
I wonder
wonder,
how I wonder how it feels to be a person that's so filled and consumed with that absolute rancid hate.
it's got to be pretty terrible. It's got to be terrible.
I almost feel bad for them.
Yeah, look, I don't feel bad about anybody who makes people, who says that people are not human, are subhuman, who treats people as if they're subhuman. And
Yeah, I said almost.
we've seen a lot of rhetoric
Mm-hmm.
coming out of the right wing that shows that says that people are subhuman. Like if you're an immigrant, if you're an undocumented immigrant,
If
you are
you're
not a
poor,
human.
if
You
you're
are a
homeless.
subhuman. You're like a dog. We get to pick the best breed, the most
Mm-hmm.
hardworking best breed. And
Right.
it's just the dehumanization of women, and oddly enough, the humanization of a fetus that is unborn, which is kind of
Right.
strange.
Ironic, yes.
It's very ironic, but I mean, I don't know very many instances on the left where we call them subhumans. We call them idiots, but that's
Yes,
different.
that's true.
We call them brain deficient sometimes. I've heard that a lot. Morons, nutbags, but never anything that they're to say that they're subhuman.
Yeah, sometimes we call them sociopaths, but that's not calling them subhuman. That's calling them someone who sees other people as subhuman.
Right.
So that's actually,
So
true.
I don't think the rhetoric on the left anywhere near matches the vitriol that we see on the right. So
Absolutely, I
that's really
agree.
why I wanted to look at this study, to show you some examples of the hate that you can hear that when you turn into conservative radio. And once again, you wonder why a lot of liberals and conservatives can't get along when actually we're more alike than you would think. We just have differing opinions on how to govern, but it's because of all these political opinion shows that take their rhetoric and hyperbole to such an extreme.
And I
That,
think a lot of conservative people, not the pundits, not the news anchors or the politicians, but conservative regular people, are, no offense to any of you out there, but you're rather uneducated, and you think that you know the issues, but you really don't. You don't know the minutia of the issues, and you probably don't have a very good grasp of history. And if you actually understood the issues, and if you're a reasonable human being and relatively intelligent, there, I don't think that as many people would be on the side of the right and believing this nonsense about, oh, we should cut all taxes and we should let everyone have a gun no matter what, and we should restrict voting and all that and this and this and so forth. But they get people on talking points, and they also it's also
well,
part of
there's
their
talking points and
it's
there's
also
sound
part of
bites.
and that's why like I said, a lot of these people are uneducated or less educated about the issues than they think they are, and that's why Republicans want to keep people uneducated and ignorant, and they want to call things like higher education elitist and dissuade young people either financially or otherwise from going to college and seeking an education, and they demean teachers and you know, cut their wages and things like that. They have a real vendetta against knowledge and education because if you keep people uninformed, they're more likely to vote Republican. That's just the truth right there.
And look, I don't want to throw conservative people under a bus, because I know many conservative people. I have family that are conservative, and they're lovely people. They're good people, really. But get them talking about politics, that's when you start a fight. But I think that we have become so polarized lately because it wasn't always this way. Democrats and Republicans, liberals and conservatives could get together and work on issues. And they made, and they would differ on their opinions of certain issues and how to approach them. But we're to the point of where one side says, let's not do anything, because if we do anything with the other side, that's weakness, that's wrong, we can't do that.
Right.
And it's partly because of this polarizing atmosphere that you do see on both sides. And we've said it ourselves. I remember we've advocated a lot for you shouldn't work with the Republicans because they're too, far to the right. We're guilty of that.
Well, that's because they create proposals and they create laws.
Well, and they move the goalpost, but it's the same thing. We're trying to work with them, and they don't want to work with us.
Right, and they bring proposals, they bring legislation that's just wrong, that's just terrible, that would be horrible for human beings, if it were passed. That would just be a terrible idea. We can't agree to these things because, they don't want to do anything that would benefit people, and I think that's also part of their plan, is to gridlock government every time that there's a Democratic hold, to make it seem like Democrats can't do anything and they're incompetent, and thus you need to, vote in the other guy because he'll get more done. That's the impression. I've talked to people, and people who are less informed around here and don't keep up with the news like we do, they just see what is superficially happening, and they're like, well, the Democrats are in office now, they have control of the Congress, they have the majority, but nothing's getting done. I guess they're just, they're incompetent, they can't do anything. We should try the other guys next time and see how well they do. That's
perfectly ignoring the fact that the Republicans do control the House, and the House is the legislative body that actually proposes a lot of legislation, and then it has to go from the House to the Senate. And of course, if it's really terrible, the Senate won't pass it. And of course, there's a filibuster in the Senate, so even if it does get past the House, you still have to pass, through Mitch McConnell's filibuster, House of Horrors.
Right, but if you try to explain what you just said to most people around here in my area, they would not understand a thing you're talking about. I bet a lot of people around here don't even understand the difference between the House and the Senate and how they work.
Right. And we all know that, you and I know that a lot of legislation actually has to go through committees first, before it even leaves the floor. And those committees are more backroom dealings, where they can wheel and deal. And not even in a lot of those committees are now being made up by a lot of right-wing legislators that don't want to do anything. I mean, you remember Todd Akin and Paul Brown, they were on the science committees. Science committees. It's unreal.
There's no end to the irony.
Right. So, I guess I want to end this segment by saying, for anybody out there who watches conservative media or consumes conservative media, you have to realize that they're pushing an agenda. And they're saying these type of hyperbolic things in order to get attention, in order to get more views, in order to get more people to listen or watch. You have to take everything you hear in media, both liberal and conservative, with a grain of salt and look up the facts for yourself. If you had the facts, only if you had the facts, can you make an informed decision about what's really going on.